Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester Chats with writer and comic book legend DG Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/CapesandLunatics. Hope to see you there.
This is DG Chichester, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome back to a live and totally planned night version of the Chichester Chats. It's me, Phil, of course Lilith, and of course Mr. Big Time himself. He's here. You may have seen the announcement from San Diego Comic-Con. Mr. DG Chichester.
Hello, guys, and this is our early evening edition of our program. So, because I can't keep my calendar straight, so thank you, and great to be here, and looking forward to chatting about whatever we decide to chat about.
Oh, I think we have to talk the big news, which yeah, I mean you can fill in the details, but yes, was it yesterday the announcement came out that yes, coming, starting in November, Mr. Chichester is going to be doing a new Daredevil miniseries.
It's true. It's very true. Yes. Yeah, I guess they did a quote unquote behind closed door retailer only presentation about a bunch of upcoming stuff at San Diego Comic-Con. And of course, the old Sicilian adage is two people can keep a secret and one is dead. So, I guess it just got out, and I got pinged by Alex Segura, and he said, like, congratulations. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh. So, I did not, I was not anticipating that the news was coming out yesterday. They certainly hadn't told me. So, at that point, it was the first I knew that it had kind of gone live. And then a lot of people seem to get excited for me and Nitho Diaz, who's doing the artwork. So there was quite a bit of chit chat back and forth, at least on Twitter, which was very exciting.
I've never been, but Lilith has been. Lilith, I mean, it's probably true. A secret told at Comic-Con is no longer a secret, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Not at all.
Right, exactly, right. Nobody's going to keep their mouth shut, I assume. And I'm sure there's people.
About Diamond, they were probably really very happy to spill anything.
Well, it seemed like, yeah, and it seemed like the reporters were kind of live streaming from the announcement room or something, from the live as it's happening tone of some of the quote unquote reports. I saw it on a couple of different places. Most amusing was the Bleeding Cool one, which was, Dan Chichester, who's calling himself DG Chichester these days. What are you talking about? Like, what identity crisis are you putting me through here? It's like, Matt Murdock is calling himself Jack Batlin these days, or it's like the only time I've been credited as Dan has been editorial credits, which was a purposeful thing. And then a couple of times some editor got it wrong. It's always been the very pretentious sounding DG Chichester. So, that was a good laugh for me. Typical of Bleeding Cool, I think. But,
exactly what I said to Phil.
Lilith mentioned that article, and then she was looking through the comments this morning. She goes, "Oh my God, this is like a first for Bleeding Cool. All the comments seem to be good. Like people are looking forward to this. Everyone,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I have to go check those out. Okay, yeah. I think we've overcome the, what idiot changed the costume to, it only takes 30 years to kind of get it to go from, it's the opposite of the Dark Knight, right? The hero becomes the villain.
Yeah.
Now, like, the
oh yeah, the not people are clamoring for all the things 90s these days.
Right. The Power Ranger costume becomes like, I can't wait to see it in action. So and there it is. Yeah,
there we go.
Bagley did a great job. That's a great cover. Really nice looking.
Yeah, so Daredevil.
I hope he does them all. I think they're trying to get him to do them all, but I don't know that that's confirmed yet.
Fingers crossed. We love a good Mark Bagley cover.
Totally.
Exactly, but yeah, I believe that's the graphic I keep seeing. I believe someone took a picture of them when they threw it up on the screen there. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. I had never met Mark in person before until March, and I met him at the Richmond Galaxy Con, and we were like chatting, and I happened to mention, but I was trying to keep my mouth shut still. I was working on something for Marvel. And he sort of like coyly was like, what is it? Tell me. And I was trying to be like a good citizen, because you're not supposed to blab. In fact, Disney makes it, in the work agreement that you sign. So I don't know if they had approached him then and he was trying to be like super coy around it, or but it was it was great and a little bit funny, when I finally saw they tapped in to do the cover.
He might like that costume. I don't know, because I know back in the 90s there was one issue of Amazing Spider-Man at the time where they had Matt Murdock. So
I thought that I remember that one, and I thought he was one of the few artists who kind of got it right. As opposed to Scott, who of course always got it right, but everybody else, we talked about it before, I know, always super bulked it up, beyond anything, and Mark usually got it pretty well.
Oh yeah, like I said, he's like my favorite Spider-Man artist. I love his stuff. Yeah, definitely. So you've been waiting to let it out of the bag. So how long has this been? How long have you been in the works?
It's this time last year, actually.
Wow.
And
you don't know Tom Holland, sir. They can trust you with the secret. Yeah. It was like actually a Terrificon last year, and I'm talking to people, and
he showed up at Terrificon, and Marvel said, "Hey, you're still alive. You want to do something?"
not off from that too much. I mean, this guy comes up and he's like, hey, it's like, nice to meet you. I'm CB Cebulski, and it took my brain like 42 seconds to process it. It's like, CB Cebulski, holy shit, hey, it's like, CB Cebulski, and and he's very complimentary, said like my stuff, and it's good to meet me, and I jokingly said, hey CB, I've been meaning to give you a call to pitch you a couple things, and he just said, well, as a matter of fact, and then just kind of put the seed out there that they had success with what he was calling, I don't know if this is an official term, but kind of like these nostalgia tours, these nostalgia series and things they had done with different people, contemporaries of mine from that time, and they'd done them and they'd been successful, and would I be interested in maybe doing something, not knowing what it was at that point, and I was no fool, and I said, well, totally, let's talk, not really knowing what's going to come of that. Maybe the guy's just a nice guy, which he is, but no real sense that it was going to necessarily become something. But I put a few thoughts in my head of what I might think about if it became something real, but I followed up with him, hey, a reminder, we met, and he jumped on it right away. And he said, listen, I've already talked to Devin Lewis, the Daredevil editor. We have a couple of ideas in mind. I'm going to put you right in touch with him. And Devin and I started talking, not, too long after that. And the first thing was, hey, we're thinking of doing something, but we want to do it, in the era of this costume, the armor costume, which I never called it armor before. And so, but boy, do I now. And I laughed out loud, because I said, Devin, you have no idea the shit I took for that outfit, back when we changed it up. And we just proceeded to talk, and, about, people are kind of picking up on it. The toy was a big hit. People love the toy. Toy is great. It does real justice to sort of like, that suit. And I said, I'll figure it out. We'll figure something out. Would not have been my first thought of going back to that, particularly. But the seeds kind of got stuck there, and it was really odd. It was still the summer, it was like around August last year. And I remember distinctly sort of like just kind of sitting out on a day not too different from today was just a gorgeous summer day. And this stuff just started to come to me, and I just started to sketch out this outline of this tale, because Devin had really said, I said, well, what are you thinking of for a story? And he just started to throw out these ideas of like, you should really go broad. You should really kind of go for, villains he hasn't kind of necessarily gone up before, characters he hasn't, confronted before. Here's a couple of ideas, just as thought starters. And I was like, oh, okay. I was used to sort of like these contained stories. And, but on that day, I sketched out a lot of stuff and I sent it to him, and we got on the phone a few weeks later, and not 90% of what I wrote down that day probably became the spine of what the story is. He had some great suggestions of like, take it from here to here, bring it over here. Don't forget about this element. Here's a way to kick Matt around a little bit more that you could maybe do. Torture. Never forget to torture Matt Murdock. And they were really, really good, editorial thoughts, broad, smart, sharp, but broad enough also that I could do what I wanted with them. They weren't like, you need to do exactly this and go down exactly this aisle. But oddly enough, it was the time gaps, because a lot of stuff was going on in the Daredevil office and everything else they cover. The time gaps on this thing were extraordinary. Like, originally he sort of said to me, can you have maybe a first plot or an outline by October, right? And this was, after we talked a little bit about it. And I was like, well, I don't know, lots going on. I got this other stuff going on, maybe a little bit later. And as it turned out, I actually got him something by late October, early November, and didn't hear anything, right? And I was like, they were really busy with stuff, and it was kind of a little bit radio silence. And then I said, and that was an outline, right? Really just an outline, like a step sheet, I would call it. And then I didn't hear anything, and I said, well, what the hell? And I wrote the whole plot for what at that point was 5 issues. So at that point it was 5 issues, and I wrote the whole plot, and this would have been about January, and again, didn't hear anything for a long time. And, I had a whole list of nudging the Daredevil office emails kind of going out. And there were very real reasons why I didn't hear anything, which won't go into, but, so when we finally did catch up, they were, which was probably late spring, really, at that point, early summer now. And they were like, this is all great. I really wouldn't ask you to change anything, except sales now wants it to be 4 issues. So, various supply chain, publishing reasons, things they've discovered over time, what works for these type of series and doesn't work. So it's like, oh, because it's not just a matter of, you need to shave a page or something. When you lose an entire issue, you're losing the pacing, right? And I had paced this thing out pretty damn well, I thought. We had like great cliffhangers. We had this moment, this happens here. So it wasn't a matter of like kind of going in and saying, oh, I don't know what I can lose, but it's like making sure that the issues still landed on good moments. And Devin, to his credit, offered to kind of pick up the red pen and say, listen, I'll do the heavy lifting on some of this. I'll go through this and, as opposed to just kind of leaving you with this to suffer through. He gave me some good broad, again, suggestions, and I kind of got what he was going for. Mm-hmm. You can condense this, more Daredevil sooner was probably a big one. And the gist of what he gave me, actually, while he wasn't able to kind of go in and diagrammatically say, here's your breaks, here's your cuts, here's your things. The broad things he gave me, again, turned out to be really, to me, very impactful suggestions. And I was able to kind of go back in relatively quickly and find some new beats to get it down to that 4, which amazingly, made it fit right, and it didn't feel like it lost any of the really important stuff.
Really cool. We were excited to be like, oh, we can pick his brain about his process now. And
yeah. For that, I can actually remember Lilith and not make stuff up.
On his brain.
30 years ago, I don't know what I was doing.
So not to let the cat out of the bag. So 4 issues starts in November. So November, December, January, February. I think we know what we're talking about, kids, on this show.
I think we do. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lilith's all excited. She's like, we can ask him about stuff he actually remembers. Yes.
Exactly. Hopefully he remembers it.
No, and I think it's going to be great Substack if you choose to share with your Substack stuff too as well. I'm pretty sure they're going to be elated and excited.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of, and there's
stuff.
Exactly. Now I can share current stuff and not let me link to whatever. But no, it's and the funny thing is, again, the editorial office has been very kind and instrumental, I think, in giving me some good suggestions, but they do tend to kind of create these weird little time gaps where, again, I turned in that rewrite and said, okay, you guys take a look at it. Let me know, if there's some changes. Do you think I hit the beats are still there? Did I get the things in the right place? And I don't hear anything, for a couple weeks. And then all of a sudden, Tom, who's Devin's assistant, he sends me, hey, what do you think of this? And he sends me the first of Nitho's first 6 pages, which you're like, what do you mean? It's in production? All of a sudden, I'm getting artwork on it. And, so I guess it's a go, I said. So, it went from, as I said to Devin, it went from kind of the slow walk to 120 miles an hour in 3.2 seconds, which there are worse things that can happen, frankly. So it's all pretty cool.
When did you find out about who was going to do your cover? When did you find out about it?
About the same time. They had mentioned some folks earlier that they were thinking of, but about the right after I got those first pages, and Devin had been traveling, or had actually, I think, in some personal business. And then he called me shortly after he got back, and he, wanted to make sure that I was cool with everything. and that's when he mentioned that they were trying to get Mark. And then he sent me the Mark's pencils, for the first of that issue. It's the first time I saw it colored was actually at that, when they sent that piece over from the press, yesterday. But I'd seen the pencils a little bit earlier, so it's looking good.
So it seems like it came all rushing back to you, pretty much.
Oh, well, it was, I'll credit you guys, and you can do whatever you want with this. I think the walks down memory lane, have actually been really instrumental in fashioning my thinking around this. Not that it was, our intention necessarily, but kind of revisiting things as we have and opening up some of those doors and recognizing, oh, geez, that didn't suck. And planted maybe some seeds, because the biggest problem, and I put big air quotes around problem, because I actually don't think it is at this point, with this series, is it doesn't just put it back into armored costume zone. It puts it back into a corner I had written for myself that I intended to get myself out of fairly quickly, but I don't get to play with Matt Murdock as a pure play character, right? He's got, at this point, he's got the Jack Batlin persona, which in Marvel's continuity, whether they're paying attention to it or not, doesn't get dismissed until, what was it, Warren Ellis and then, Mark DeMatteis do their, twofer, Mark's more considered exploration and Warren's one issue joke fest of ripping the costume apart. So there's this weird dynamic of how do I make this a Matt Murdock story more than a Jack Batlin story. And Jack was never again supposed to be a character. Jack was a mask. And that was probably the trickiest part of the exploration. But I think in doing it, has actually opened up some really interesting things. I'm really excited about like what I'm being able to play out there. And not that I necessarily needed the advice, because I was kind of pretty well along the way of the thinking on this. But I had happened to have lunch with Fabian Nicieza, and a little bit in between, this thing taking off and getting into it, in the weeds on stuff. And his advice was great, which he said, just write it like you never stopped writing it. And so thinking about, and not that I would want to be that person again, because he was pretty mixed up, but, I had this sort of long-term plan for Batlin and how he was going to play out with Matt, and how that was going to get to probably 350. But just kind of stepping back into that world was good, because now I can sort of look at it through the lens of people who sort of mistreated the costume and mistreated the Batlin mask, and but not to do anything with that, like not an acknowledgement or trying to kind of do one up on that, but just again think about the importance of Matt Murdock as a lawyer to Daredevil as a vigilante, and how the two sides kind of work together. So that's been the really fun part of it. One of the fun parts of it.
So that was going to be one of my questions, is like, is there a definitive point this takes place? So this is kind of like, if you had more time, is this going to be kind of be a continuation? Like if you had more time on the book?
Yeah. The way I'm looking at it, and the way I talked to editorial about it, because I said, well, what's the weird time drift? Obviously this is not 1990s, right? Because everything would be archaic and people would be on, dial-up modems and shit like that. They drift of kind of like, well, the 90s are like 5 years ago, like, not that I really kind of get into, any real use of technology or anything that would really date it, I don't think. But my point of view became, that there were a lot of adventures we never saw, right? It wasn't just, the second half of Fall from Grace, Tree of Knowledge, the Alan Smithy era, and and a couple of associated other stories that other people used, and a couple of trading cards, and that was it. Let's assume there was a lot more going on with Daredevil as the new Daredevil, and other things kind of going around, and this is one of them. And if this does well, maybe there's another one. Who knows? Whether I don't.
It's
that's
not
nothing.
Like he's Wolverine, where literally everything in between every single page has been covered. So that is nice.
Yeah. So there's a whole host of things that could have been happening here, and that's how I just sort of looked at this. Like this is an adventure that happened in that time frame that we never looked at before.
And I know you probably can't spoil anything or anybody who's showing up in this book, but so I'll just wait for you to say the return of Surgeon General.
See, you guys knew I was waiting.
Oh,
because I'm gonna keep going back to that organ stealing until I get it right, and
then they're gonna meet Carnage and take Carnage's organs.
Exactly, but I think after we talked about the hardware stuff, I think I got the organ, stealing people right with those guys, and I don't need to go back there again. Maybe I can go back to eco-terrorism. I don't think I still kind of nailed that particular trope well enough, but no, I will admit there are no callbacks to Surgeon General. There are a couple of sort of weird little callbacks though to Root of Evil and Tree of Knowledge a little bit, but just little tiny ones, just little nods for myself more than anything.
Oh, I'm going to have to cover some Tree of Knowledge soon.
Yeah.
Maybe like a month before or something, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like that. I do like the most important headline. This project wouldn't exist without this podcast, right, Lil?
It is. That's it. Exactly right. Broadcast that. No, I do. I honestly do feel, these kind of conversations have given me a different look back at that sort of stuff that I would have, that unconsciously influences your appreciation and your thinking of it. So I think that gives it a more full form, range to kind of approach the things the way that I, have. Because honestly, it worked out pretty well. Like I said, in that long afternoon of sort of like just beat sheeting a lot of stuff out, but there were a lot of details to continue to build out, to kind of keep going back to, the story's not about the armor as like a thing. It's not like, oh, why do I have this armor and all this other stuff? There's no like moments like that. But
it's just shorthand.
It's just
a time.
It's just the guidepost. It's like, okay, it's this era.
Yeah, but it allows you to sort of then, okay, acknowledge some things that need to be acknowledged and work them through in a way that then sets up like just a mindset for the character and a mindset for the era that I don't think it quite got. It's not a story that, oh, I need to tell this story per se, or I need to correct anything per se, but it does, to me at least, enrich that section of time for him, at least in my mind, which sort of sets up some things and actually extends even a couple of the supporting characters that I had sort of inserted in there, new characters that had sort of gotten placed in the background. It's like, oh, I'm going to keep coming back to these guys and we're going to build on these a little bit. And now I get to do a little bit more with them.
So I know you're your own harshest critic. Did you go back and read some of your own work in preparation for this?
Well, probably again just through you guys.
Oh, okay.
I didn't go back and
I didn't know if you read like the whole,
scratch my head. Nah, I know it well enough. I know the. And they sent me a lot of stuff. They sent me a lot of my own stuff, which I had, and that's where I'd actually gotten the. If you remember on one episode of this thing, I think I did say, recently I reread that Warren Ellis issue, which I'd never read before. That was the preparation for this. So that's the reason I actually went and read the Ellis issue and the Mark DeMatteis issues, that followed to kind of
did happen.
Oh no!
Exactly.
Oh no!
Yeah. Because I was trying to get a sense of like, well, is there anything there I need to? I was given no charge. You need to acknowledge this, or you need to pull from this. But I was kind of interested. All right, what happened? Like, how does it? How long did it continue, if at all? And what did I need to? Not that I needed to do anything, but was there any fodder there? And if anything, because as I said, I laughed so hard at the Ellis issue, because it's just so ridiculous. And it was also the whole thing about, he rips the costume up with like some scissors from Kmart or something. And this whole thing was supposed to be made of, this biomimetic, super strong material. No, it was just a matter of like I'm in the zone, or back in the zone of things, and okay, what does Daredevil need to do? What's some stuff they need to do? I think the one thing that was funny to me, and I'd sent this to editorial, as I was sort of pitching this first idea when I sent it over to them, as I sent it, as the first beat sheet, the kind of outline. And I said, well, the first thing you're going to notice is this is pretty off the leash in some places, but I said, one of the things I think that if you read Fall from Grace and Tree of Knowledge more so than, the Wages of Sin, story, is they're pretty bugfuck stories, if you excuse the term. Like, they're really kind of out there. Like, he just gets involved in these things that are bigger. Maybe that was a very 90s thing. Or a very, very armored costume thing. So there are definitely some aspects of this story that fit that quality, while still keeping what Matt is and what Daredevil wants to do and why he's doing it fairly grounded. But I think that's kind of a defining quality of these types of stories, which was just fun and encouraging to return to. Again, with the encouragement of the editorial office.
And I don't know how much you can go into detail with this without spoiling anything, but is there anything, how do I say this, that you did differently writing this time than you would have if you had written this 30 years ago?
It's better. I've got 30 years of being, a better writer, under the belt. I consciously, I shifted tenses a lot on Daredevil as I got either full of myself or maybe insecure about myself in different places. Because when I first started it, it had a very first person narrative. You were kind of like inside Matt's head all the time, and that was the dialogue. And then as I shifted into some later stories, and especially the Fall from Grace and on run, it became a more third person narrative, right? It was like, one step removed. The narrator's voice became me or some other thing. And this, I just went back into his head. I felt it was much more grounded, and it was much more impactful to have him be the narrator, throughout. And so you're getting things from his perspective and his observations. And I've found that overall to be that I might not have done that, right? I might have continued on with that one step removed sort of thing that was going on.
So, okay, so. Sorry, I'm just digesting that answer.
Does it make sense?
Yes, yes.
I get what you're saying, totally.
Yeah.
I feel like, that's actually something that just was kind of a trend, actually, where we kind of lost the hero's perspective for a while. We didn't really know what was going on with them from their perspective, only like how other people were seeing them. So and
right.
It's pretty messed up in the head, and so it's a scary place to be. But sometimes you always wonder, what's he thinking?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can. I mean, it's a thing, right? And you see it go through different trends of comics, and you get the third person narration or the omniscient narrator narration or writing, which can, just be 2 lines or it could be 20 lines. These gigantic captions that are the size of small Robert E. Howard novellas, and you're continuing on with that, which can be freeing and stuff in one way, but it can work sometimes. It can work really well. Somebody just tagged actually the Batman Daredevil thing I'd done, and I had done that in that same style. And I had that whole exchange between Harvey Dent and Matt Murdock, in there, and the narrator is sort of describing them and what they're going through. And, rereading that as this guy sort of tagged it, it's like, okay, that worked. That worked fine. And maybe that would have worked for the story too, but it wasn't the mindset I was in. And maybe just because I'm investing myself in trying to make sure that I'm telling a Matt Murdock Daredevil story, it's more intentional and purposeful and pure to kind of let him tell the story, or my version of him tell the story.
And I know you said you get a chance to flesh out some of the characters you didn't the first time. Did you say something about new characters? Like, are we going to see like antagonists for Matt like he never encountered before, at least in your run?
Yeah, I mean, people I never used before. There's nobody new. Spoiler alert. There's nobody new. Like, oh, I'm not going to introduce a new villain that's really great and then kill him in the same storyline like I normally do. So sorry. I've overcome that sin. But there are, to my knowledge, some villains here that I don't think Daredevil, at least certainly in my run, never confronted. There might be issues in between. He's run into some people, but a couple of folks to give him some knocks around and for him to ultimately knock around a little bit. And again, it was, I will credit the editorial guys with planting those seeds, just sort of saying, go off the leash, go off the hook, go try out, come back to us with, weird stuff. So I did.
Must feel good.
I just want this to do well so we can get an electric book by you. Like, that's what we've really been manifesting. Just
well, that would be cool too. Although Electra's cooking nowadays, right? She's not a woman without fear, right?
She doesn't have her own book. So that's the one thing we've been clamoring for her own book. And two, give it to Chichester. Come on.
I'll go back and do the 90s Electra. I don't know that she was done justice after in quite that way, but
that's all we need, an ongoing series by Chichester. What I would have done.
No, we don't want that. We want these little kind of like moments in time.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The book is what I would have done. You do a Daredevil arc, you do an Electra arc, throw Terror in there. Come on.
Well, believe me, I've got some Terror swag. I'm gonna drop on CV at Terrificon. And I'm gonna give him these shitty things I like printed up at this cheap like sticker place. Say, listen, totally unlicensed, swag to get you thinking, but about a non-selling character,
Say, hey, listen, kid. I know. It's probably too late for this Halloween, but next Halloween, a terror special might push some units in.
Exactly.
No, like we're so.
Uh-oh. I think we got the Mexico cutoff.
She fell out of her chair. She's so excited.
Did I? Oh, sorry.
You did. Dropped, you blanked out the end there.
Yes, we're so excited to see the new stuff. So
thank you, guys. Thank you. Did you see the?
Come soon enough. Like we have.
Did I guess that press thing did it just have that one image, or did it show like some of the other?
It had some black and white images as well.
It did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you can see some of that stuff there. And I'm gonna, now that the devil's out of the bag, as it were, I'm gonna cut some of that up and start setting up my own social sort of thing. You guys are getting like first discussion of this, so
nice.
By all means, make of it what you will. But I'm going to take some of these high resolution scans that the inker and such has been sending over, and start kind of feeding it out. It does. I mean, it looks like when I saw the first spread and which was described as like this should be like a movie poster, and like and does this and this, and it was just. It was off the leash, and it's crazy. It's just really different looking stuff for Daredevil artists that I worked with in the past, which is great. And I hope Nitho gets fabulous attention, off of it. I'm sure he will. It's really, really exciting looking storytelling. He's getting so much great stuff on the page, great stuff, of course, which I've written. But I mean, he's running with it in a really amazing way, making some really good storytelling choices, and it's a real showcase, I think, and he's not even into the quote unquote good stuff yet,
Yeah, his G.I. Joe stuff is what I'm most familiar with, and it's really good. And his I've seen the Predator stuff, which I know he's got some good attention on. So it's really, there's some pages where he made some choices. And, I try to break the page down to like, say, 6 panels or whatever, trying to be mindful of it. And he opened it up to like 9 panels in some cases and just add it and still looks like this very open page. He knew that he found the balance of things and decided to add in some other elements of his own, to make it, even better in that way. And it's like, wow, you're really like delivering on it, in such really great ways. And if he's doing so much of the stuff now, then when he gets to the real crackerjack stuff later on, I don't know. It's definitely going to be crazy. So it's just based on the opening spread alone. I'm really excited.
So yeah, well, I mean, when the series is out, I mean, we'll try to record as close to when each issue drops as we can. And I mean, if you're up for it, and if Nitho would want to join us, I mean, maybe we have him on for at least one of those episodes.
Yeah, I mean, that would be terrific with me. I mean, I would if he's up for it, totally. Yeah, that would be awesome, and then he can talk about it. I'd rather hear his perspective. It's like, what is this guy writing? I don't know. I'm just going to make it look good.
And again, consider us your press team. I mean, if you have stuff to share, send it to me. We'll blast out all over social media before this thing comes out and get the word out.
Tag you and stuff and all that. Yeah, definitely. I mean, just in terms of like saturation, like I have a lot of at least the pages up through what's been done so far. Clearly that I'm scripting against, but, my theory is, I mean, I wish Marvel had let me know a little bit before so I could have laid some, you guys were on definitely my list of like, hey, I want you to let you know what's going on. So that this whole thing just became this, oops, I guess it's out there, but I want to hold off a little bit so you don't waste all the fuel before November. So, it makes more sense to probably start sharing things in like, with a hard push late September, through October and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, you were good. I mean, it wasn't that long after I saw the announcement that you messaged me. So I was like, oh yeah, we saw this. We wanted to talk about this.
Yeah.
and I would love to be the gatekeepers of this stuff. But kids, if you want to ask the man himself about this, what he can tell you, Terrificon next weekend.
Totally.
Coming weekend. Yeah.
I'm actually, I think, going to, just on, just print out some of the ink pages and just bring them with me and have them in like a little, like binder for people to look at or something like that, just because why not get people excited about it if they ask about it and all that kind of thing. Have something there beyond me.
I think that'd be interesting. It'd be like, here, guys, you want to see some artwork of stuff that hasn't come out yet? It's gonna, it's not.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally, that's. I don't think I'm breaking any. If CB comes by and says put that away, then I'll do that. But I don't think there's anything lost by getting some more excitement kind of going on around it now, since Marvel got the word out. I don't know if they thought this was going to stay quiet because they did it in this retailer only room, but again, that's not the way the world works anymore.
Yeah, again, at Comic-Con, I don't think they had too high hopes it was going to stay.
3 years, they're a little rusty.
Maybe. What, these like phone devices that can transmit pictures and stories.
And plus, it shifted, with the strike and stuff. So everybody's grabbing on to whatever they can.
It's big comics. Comics are the king this year.
Yeah,
comics are actually
That actually seems to be a thing. I mean, I keep reading that.
That's the one bright side.
Comics are getting a lot of attention at San Diego, which of course normally they're buried. So maybe this is a indication to the
get back to our roots. Let's get some
the Comic-Con, right, or the Comic-Con people to sort of say, you can actually equalize the pressure and gain value from both sides instead of dominating everything that comes out of your announcements with just movie announcements. So yeah. I that's probably a fool's dream, but
no, I don't think so. I think we're probably going to see the return to a more. I've been going since I was very young, so I literally have seen the evolution of it, and it was fun for a while. Like that 2012 to 2017 era was really cool with MCU Phase 1 and all that. Then I got just really tired of Supernatural taking over H Hall. I was like, bro, I'm here for the Artist Alley, things like that, the behind the business panels and things like that.
Right.
And it just got fewer and fewer and fewer. So it's kind of a refreshing change.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it's very, very cool to see, and I think
because all the little cons have been getting more press because they were more focused on the actual comic book of it all.
Yeah,
recently.
I mean, not that Terrificon hasn't always been very comics focused. Mitch Halek, who runs it, is very much that way. But he's got so many freaking comics people. I was like joking with him. It's like, it's just easier to list the people who are not going to be there at this point.
So good to hear. I really feel like you no offense, I don't mean this in a derogatory way. Like the old school guys could really meet some of the new school guys, and I just feel like the comic book club has gotten so much bigger, but lost a little bit, a lot of mentorship and stuff like that, and that's why it's some of the things are happening in the industry. So I feel like if there's more big gatherings for you guys to have opportunities to meet with your stories.
I think you're absolutely right, Lilith, and that's not a dig at all. I think that's sort of the sad fact of the way the industry works. Not that it should work that way, but they do demonstrably push out kind of one generation, right? People just stop getting work in a lot of ways, and then they're relegated over here, and then this new wave kind of comes in, and there aren't always places where you have a lot of overlap. In some cases, so certainly conventions equalize that because you're either sitting right next to somebody or you're across from them, or you can walk around and oh, you're that guy. And sometimes, again, in cases, even for myself, I mean, there's people I never met in person, who now I get to sort of see and you're him, I mean, this wasn't a comic convention. This was a comic, this is a show called the LuxCon, which is a dark fantasy art or something like that, which runs in Pennsylvania every year around October. And I went a couple years ago, actually before COVID. It would have been more than that. But I'd never met Dave Dorman before. Great, a fantastic Star Wars artist and other things. It's I see the artwork from a distance, I was like, damn, I know that artwork because he's such a distinctive style. And then, I introduced myself to him like, I don't, if you remember, I hired you for some Hellraisers or whatever, and he did, he lit up right away. And it was just very cool to make that connection there. But, I will certainly be walking around at Terrificon and introducing myself to all sorts of people. But, unless I'm just swamped at my table and just stay there.
I have a feeling you might be swamped. More so than normal. You're going to see some increased traffic for sure.
I have a feeling next time we talk, you're going to be like, man, I got some carpal tunnel from signing all those Fall from Grace and Tree of Knowledge issues, Yeah,
it's like, it's anything with armor. The best thing was a GalaxyCon. Somebody brought the toy over, and they had gotten Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox to sign it. So I was the third signature on it. So it's like, I'll take the third spot on this one. That's cool.
The only guy on here who had anything to do with this. Okay. Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe Born Again, they'll slug the costume and,
I had this crazy thought. I'm like, I would love to believe that CB Sapolsky is listening to us and got the idea for this series from us, but... And again, you deserve all the credit for this, but I was going to say, Daredevil Born Again, is it possible they might be adapting a Chichester story?
I wouldn't think so. No? I really wouldn't.
He would have already found out the way that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, no, not with the way that they, I found out this was happening yesterday, right?
True.
So, I don't know. I don't know that there's.
Because they always say there's no synergy, but I mean, you look at Sam Wilson in the comics these days. He looks remarkably like Anthony Mackie all of a sudden. I just
that kind synergy,
of stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I'm just saying, it just
total synergy in that way. I just don't know if there's the right place for those types of stories. It all depends on where they go with Daredevil.
Fall the Kingpin.
Looks like we won't be finding out till 2030.
Right.
With that poor writer's strike. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that would be a great way to sort of
cap that off.
My theory for Born Again, would be, and that's the reason they introduced Murdoch the way they introduced him in She-Hulk, is he's the happy-go-lucky Matt Murdock, right? He's the Matt Murdock from before Miller, right? He's got money, a little bit of money, he's got a little bit of success. Everything's kind of very good for him. What's wrong? I'm blind. That's tough, but everything's kind of cool, right? At one point, Matt Murdock had a penthouse and he's this junior league, Bruce Wayne, sort of character. And then Frank Miller blew it all up, and he gets all bitter and embittered, and and becomes dark Murdoch, more in a way. That's the arc. I think that's the reason it is. And then if they really want to put the screws to Vincent D'Onofrio, then they bring in a couple of moments from Fall of the Kingpin to have Matt go full circle and say, well, now I'm in charge. I wouldn't complain if that happened, but but whatever happens with it, I'm game. I'm sure it'll be good. But again, it's a ways off with the strikes and all.
Yeah, that's what me and Lilith are all afraid of, because with this writer's strike, it seems like 2024 television is going to be like a lot of reality shows.
2025 too. I mean, like I said, we probably won't recover until 2027. I was there. I've been alive for the last two strikes that have really gone on.
Yeah, and these are awful strikes, and they're callous on the part of these people, the money people in charge, and the actors and the writers have every right to do what they're doing and should be doing what they're doing. And I'm glad they're taking the stand, and the stuff they're being put back on, is being put back on them it's outrageous, right? I mean, I'm glad that they're making a stand and that they're getting it out there, but you keep seeing these obviously PR based, salvos, from the money people, well, what do these actors need money for? What do these writers need money for?
We always coming from CEOs and stuff and executives. Yeah.
Right. $250 million a year, this kind of stuff.
And it goes to just the power of unions in general. Like, if Hollywood's union can't get anything done, what hope did just, regular, blue collar worker unions have too?
Well, right. But that
trickles down. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in unions, and everyone forgets, that's the reason you've got certain job rights and other things. But they have to make these things happen, and
that's why technology is great, but technology can be scary. So.
Right, and I can live without, I can live without my next season or whatever if it's going to, end up being better ultimately for people. There's plenty of other stuff I have to catch up on, and you know what? There's also TV. There's books too, right? I can read a book, and there's no shortage of entertainment out there. So that's not an issue that I can't put on.
And I hear we have some great comic books to come.
Yeah, I was going to say, kids, there might be no new TV in November, but you can pick up Daredevil Black Armor #1.
Exactly. Righto. There you go.
Let's leave out on top, Phil.
All right. But again, before we go, if these kids want to get their Chichester Daredevil issues from the 90s signed, because they will go up in value after November, where, to give them the Terrificon details.
There you go. Terrificon, which is in Connecticut, the Mohegan Sun Casino, this coming Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which is, what is that, 29th, 30th, 31st? Is that right? Or 28th, 29th, 30th?
29th, 30th, yep.
28th, thank you for correcting me. I will not be there on Friday, but I will be there on Saturday and Sunday all day until it gets really slow on Sunday, and then I will leave. And but drop by, say hi, bring whatever you want, and we'll figure out a way to sign it up and talk about whatever. And thank you for bringing that up and keeping up to date on the stuff. You can always check me out on my newsletter at storymaze.substack.com, which amazingly I'm on schedule for and have not dropped an issue in a while, which is good too. And now I have other things to talk about in the newsletter because I can just fill it up with Black Armor news. And I have all my subjects between now and November.
Well, at least now we know why you haven't been doing the Substack. You've been busy. Now we know why.
No, that's just because I'm poor time management in certain instances. I would love to sort of but I'm honest. I'm honest enough. Yeah.
You've been writing these Daredevil issues. You're like, shh, no, I've been flying drones.
I've been crashing drones, 3D masks and all that kind of stuff, right?
Oh, that's what put the idea for that Daredevil in his head. Yeah, okay, because he was working on those issues. Okay,
there you go.
Oh, there's his thinking cap for these issues, Lilith. That Daredevil helmet.
The thinking cap.
Yes, that's it. I'd put that on, and the ideas would just come to me. It was amazing, and I would take it off, and I couldn't think of anything. So it's all good. Yep. No, that's the thought process. No, it's very exciting. So thanks for highlighting it.
But yes, like I said, once those issues are out, we can cover those. Next month, we can do. You want to do those Nick Fury issues? We were going to do this.
Sure, we'll go back to Nick Fury, and then I'm already prepped for that. And this way you'll be able to critique these new Daredevils in real time. Yes. Maybe I can interview you guys. We'll turn it around. So.
All right. Yeah.
Threaten Phil with a good time.
Oh yeah. I'll give you my opinions. All right. Thank you, sir, once again for it's always a pleasure, but again for basically giving us an exclusive. So
sure, my pleasure, and again, thank you for reorienting our time today. I'll try not to do that again. So all good stuff. Enjoy the rest of your weekends. I'm off to Barbenheimer tomorrow, so that's
nice. I've done my round.
Did you? Did it back to back?
Yep, back to back. Are you doing it on IMAX?
There is it says IMAX. I don't know if it's a real IMAX, but it says IMAX. I don't know if it's the actual, sometimes the movie theaters call it IMAX, but it looks pretty big. So,
that's the only way to see Oppenheimer. I just have to say that.
All right. And definitely there is IMAX on the ticket label. So, looking forward to it, but we'll be there at the theater all day. So,
yes, you will.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. Be well.
You too.
Too.
Take care. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.